7. So we also
Yes.
we have our. Give me just a moment, please.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm there, sir.
Yeah. Give me just a moment. I have to start streaming it on YouTube. Yeah, I'm done. So now I'll start recording. Please give me another second. Yes. So I welcome all of you for today's meeting or the session. It's nice to have Dr. Horimadhav Rai with us. Pardon me that I didn't call you Ray. As the coordinator for today's session, we have Dr. Chandramoli Sengupta. And so she's a senior professor of Bengali language and literature. I welcome you, Dr. Sengupta, and our thanks to you for accepting this task. So I'm handing this session over to you. Thanks a lot.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me in this very special session. On behalf of the International Society for Bengal Studies, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the 6th or the penultimate day of the 7-day lecture series on non-scheduled Indian languages to commemorate International Mother Language Day. This 7-day long program is being jointly organized by the India chapter of International Society of Bengal Studies, School of Language and Linguistics, Jadavpur University, and Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies, University of Delhi. As we all know, that today's talk is going to throw light on the debate about linguistic differences, if any, between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri as languages. So I felt that a little prelude might be necessary, though we have a specialist in Dr. Horimadhav Rai to throw more light on it. As for my little understanding of languages, I know that the basic concept about differences between languages are based on the grammar, which includes vocabulary, script, and to be more specific, the verb structure. And when there is any difference in the verb structure, it creates a disparity in the syntax of the two languages. So therefore, differences in vocabulary, script, and verb happen to be the key factors to decide whether one language is different from the other. Now, on this note, maybe we can take a quick look at the questions which are raised about Rajbanshi as a dialect. As we all know, Rajbanshi is a member of the Indo-Aryan family of languages and is considered also as a variant of the Bengali language as per the census report till date. But there is a strong argument regarding that for a long time, that Rajbanshi, which is spoken in Assam, is very different from the Bengali, from Bengal, or the Rajbanshi, which is spoken in Bengal. So the debate rises like this, that why won't Rajbanshi be considered as a variant of Assamese or a dialect of Assamese instead of Bengali? Amid such controversy, I was privileged to meet Dr. Roy before in a workshop in Panchanan Barma University in 2017, where I first came across a very rich heritage of Rajbanshi literature. We also found that a grammar has been written as well. And with the development of the language towards the mid-80s, many had started considering Rajbanshi as not a variant of Bengali, but maybe as an independent language. Now, this nomenclature initiated an issue because by that time there was a rising demand to consider Kamtapuri also as a separate language. As history shows that every state demands a state language from among the variants prevalent there. Rajasthan and Jharkhand and some other states of India, can bear testimony for such a feud. So in this context, it is also important for us to note that a large geographical area near Dhubri in Assam has been marked as a center for Kamtapur, and with a bill also being passed in the Assam Assembly. And accordingly, the demand for Kamtapuri also emerged. Now, this bill gives definitely a geographical area, a technical and administrative boundary, but somehow many people refuse to accept it. That in the stating that in the perspective of Assam, there may be linguistic differences between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, but the perspective of North Bengal says something else, where they feel that there is not such much difference between the two languages, or rather, I should say that the difference is really negligible. So the debate continues. till date, much like the language situation in Jaleshwar of Orissa or Danton of West Bengal, where though the home language is the same, but the geographical location differs. Therefore, the languages are considered as different. And another case in point could also be Hindi and Urdu, whose apparent similarity is shadowed by the fact that their source languages are different, hence the vocabulary is also not similar. Now, this brings us to the two most vital aspects of the differentiation between any two languages. First, from the linguistic point of view, differentiation between the grammar of the two languages, and second, from the cultural point of view, where the people speaking such languages accept those languages as different from one another. I will not go on further, because to throw light on that and speak at length about that debate, we have with us today as a very distinguished speaker, Dr. Horimadhav Rai, who is going to speak on the topic, is there any linguistic difference between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, an unending saga of nomenclature and its outcome? Before I invite Dr. Rai, I would like to give you a brief bio note about him. Dr. Horimadhav Rai is an assistant professor in the Center for Linguistics, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, JNU. His area of specialization include construction grammar, morphology, phonology, field linguistics, folklore, and literature. He's experienced in conducting field work on different Indo-Aryan languages, namely Rajbanshi, Kumayuni, Awadhi, Shekhawati, and Dhundhari. As a part of the Mother Tongue Survey of India in the 2010 project, he also conducted field work on different varieties of Hindi and Haryanvi spoken in Delhi and Haryana respectively. Dr. Roy has also received a Nobin Shikha Bid, that is a Young Teacher Award, which is conferred upon by the Panchanon Shankho Sitai of Cooch Behar in West Bengal. Some of his notable publications are numerals in Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, idiomatic usage of Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri numerals, construction morphology 1, construction morphology 2, phonological and morphological characteristics of Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri. Apart from these very technical books, he also has written a short story collection in Rajbanshi titled Dhuplung Dhaplang, and also children's rhyme in Rajbanshi titled Kutur Kutur Kuttu Kutur. With that introduction, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Horimadhav Rai to speak on linguistic differences, if any, between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri. On behalf of ISBS, Dr. Rai, I now welcome you to present your valuable opinion. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Chandramalli Sengupta. I think this is the second time I'm meeting you, though it's an online thing. Last time, as you have already mentioned, that it is in Panchanan Barma University, Cooch Behar. So thank you, Dr. Chandramalli Sengupta, for giving you the introduction and the background of the lecture. I think most of the parts you have already covered, so, okay. So thank you for also introducing me, let's say, and the organizer, especially Dr. Samir Karmakar, as well as Professor Amitabh Chakraborty and Professor Krishna Bhattacharya, for inviting me to deliver this special talk, because you're commemorating this International Mother Language Day, and I think this is the 7th day and the last day. So thank you. And the topic of, so to say this, like, is there any linguistic difference between Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri? So since I am myself is a speaker of, let's say, Rajbanshi, and not only Rajbanshi, at the same time, let's say Bangla, I can also speak Hindi, and to some extent also Assamese, and yeah. So this is my linguistic brief background, let's say, and English. That's the language. Let's say we have to speak, because we are in the other states. I'm here in Delhi, so this is the language of bread and butter for me, and not only for me, for many people at the same time. Okay, so I think you have made me the co-host. So can I share my screen if it's possible, Dr. Amitabh?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So,
I think you have to make it full screen.
yes, I'm making. So is it fine now, sir?
Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah, right. Now it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you and welcome to all of you, participants, organizers, and respected professors. So now let's say, so I'll make a PowerPoint presentations. How much time I do have, sir, that you could tell me, then accordingly I'll speak.
Oh, as the speaker, you have 1 hour.
1 hour. Okay, so I have 1 hour. Okay, thank you, sir.
And we have 20 minutes to discuss.
Okay, so this is the title of my talk, let's say, and so I'll be talking about, is there any linguistic difference between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, and unending saga of nomenclature and its outcome. So nomenclature, all that kind of names given to that language, so we'll talk about a little bit history of that. Okay, so I myself in the Center for Linguistics, so I've been teaching here for more than 13 to 14 years. And okay, I myself worked on Rajbanshi language in my PhD as well, and also conducted fieldwork in Rajbanshi, took students back in different places of North Bengal, from JNU itself. So that's what, so not only mother tongue is not my mother tongue, at the same time I've conducted fieldwork in that language, you see. So what today I'm planning to work, talk about, one thing is that the complex history of the Rajbanshi community and their language, so to say. So that's a little bit of the history itself is very complex, you see. So, and then going to the nomenclature, whether it is Rajbanshi versus Kamrupi, or Kamta, or Kamthai, Kamtapuri, Rongpuri, Goalparia, Sujapuri. So there are many, let's say, the nomenclature we find out, you see. So it's not only about two, Rajbanshi versus Kamtapuri. Even if you remember the person Panchanan Barma, he himself talked about Kamta Bihari. It's not Kamtapuri, So that's what. So we'll try to find out linguistic difference, or is just the nomenclature difference, and all of you know that there is no such linguistic difference except Kamtapuri Academy. If you look at Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy, which is, let's say, formed in 2018 by this, government, West Bengal government, and only in the difference somewhere in the script you will see that also, okay? And but somehow, because that neighboring language and Bangla is also spoken there, so maybe only few examples of Rajbanshi and Bangla, though it is considered to be the dialect or the variety of, let's say, this Bangla. But we'll try to see, let's say, how and the kind of characteristics that the linguistic talk about in the different levels of the grammar, phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and other types of differences. So that's what we try to look into, as Dr. Chandramalli Mollik, she has already pointed out kind of differences. Yes, so linguistic difference, but historically, definitely, there are some differences between the two communities. If you talk about Rajbanshi and the Bengali communities, historically, that's definitely, culturally, definitely, there are differences. Linguistically, yeah, how you look at language and variety of the dialect, because it's a matter of polity and politics, mainly because the kind of opinion we give as a linguist, those opinions are not, let's say, nobody listens to those opinion, So we had seen whole the 8th schedule debate, if you look at, and there are many cases, I'll also try to, tell you, let's say. So this is what, and also the way census reports are conducted, looking at Rajbanshi language, it's a shabby census reports. If you look at it, only in a district, you'll find that how many Rajbanshi speakers? 110, 120, something like that. So it's so horrific, horrific and terrific kind of report if you look at it, the census reports. So I look at the census report from, let's say, way back from, at least from 1991 to 2011. Let's see what kind of census reports are telling us about Rajbanshi. What about Kamtapuri? Does it figure out in the census report? Let's see also. So these are some of the things and what's ground reality. So the politics of divide and rule, or something else going on in North Bengal. So this is what also. So I'm somehow opening the Pandora's box, or maybe hornet's nest. So it's a very, very debatable subject, debatable topic. Many of the people, they run away to discuss about it, like this topic and all. So it's okay, no problem. Since an academician, we should at least speak on what is the ground reality happening, you see. So this is where overview of my talk, what would be I'll be talking about today. Now, the complex history and the separation saga, if you look at, so this is briefly West Bengal. We find Rajbanshis back there, and not only in West Bengal. When we talk about West Bengal, it's basically North Bengal and those districts, let's say, whether it's Cooch Behar, Jalpaiguri, Darjeeling, Malda, Dinajpur, and Alipur also recently, one of the districts. Earlier it was part of Jalpaiguri. So, and West Assam, Kokrajhar, Goalpara. So, and especially there in West Assam, it's either termed as Cooch Rajbanshi or Goalparia. And also Rajbanshi speakers you'll find somewhere in Bihar, Jhapa and Morong of Nepal as well. Okay, and some parts of Northeast as well. If you talk about the geographical distinction, yeah, Bangladesh definitely, Rangpur, that region also you'll find many Rajbanshi speakers. So the kind of understanding, let's say, we do have that many people. It's still they call themselves as Deshi, Hamra Deshi Manshi, Hamar Deshi Bhasha. We are Deshi people. So Deshi, or if you look at the term Deshi, somewhere, even in Hindi belt also many people say that Dehati. So we are Dehati, we speak Dehati language, because it's my experience also. If you look at conducting field work in different places, they simply say that, okay, I'm thod Dehati bolte hain. गाँव वाला भाषा बोलते हैं. So that kind of, so Deshi Manshi, Deshi Bhasha, indigenous people, indigenous language, that kind of understanding also we do have. Many people also call this, oh, we speak Muitui Bangla or Deshi Bangla. That's another term, terminology. So talking about Rajbanshi and the people, so what kind of earlier findings we do have, or socio-anthropological details we do have? So say that these people are Mongoloids origin. Okay, again, another understanding is that they're Dravidians origin. Some people again claim that they're mixed of Mongoloid, Aryans, and Dravidians. If you look at another claim, and I'll talk about who has. Now, after, let's say, somewhere beginning of the 20th century, the whole, let's say, the Cooch, for the time being, if you consider that Cooch is the root, I'm saying consider it, not saying that admit it, okay? For time being, if you look at, so the Cooch, let's say, for time being, consider it Cooch, maybe the root is the Cooch, and they have gone through the Sanskritization process or Hinduization process, and those Hinduized Cooches became Rajbanshi. That is one claim. Another claim, let's say, there itself, the Cooches who did not go through the Sanskritization process, the Hinduization process, the remained Cooch. That is what, and mainly the Cooches, they are somewhere in Assam or northeast part in India. Another very, very strong claim here, and again, whatever the claim or the mythical claim or whatever, because this itself, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, it's a mythical event if you talk about talking about the caste system of India also to some extent, the way. So many Rajbanshis, they themselves believe that they are Kshatriya. Neither they are Mongoloid origin, nor Dravidian origin. They are the ancestors of the kings and all. So this is the very strong feeling of many Rajbanshis. So if someone says that they are somewhere Dravidian origin or Mongoloid origins, they're really angry. There is a section, I'm telling you. And somehow this started, whole movement started with Panchanan Burma itself. You know that, the whole story and all. So this is where the kind of understandings we do have about Rajbanshi community, okay? Now, so these are the people, if you talk about, so who are the people who worked on Rajbanshi, Rajbanshi community and all. So Hamilton, Hodgson, Dalton, Bivalray, Raune, Hunter, and many, let's say. Risley, Gate, Grierson. We know about whole Grierson survey, started in 1888, then ending in 1927, huge, almost 40 years and all, So Grierson's linguistic survey, Malay, so, and many people. An Imperial Gazetteer of India, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, Kirat Kiti, Grierson, I have already mentioned. So these are some of the people, scholars, administrators, linguists, not necessarily linguists, mainly administrators, let's say, during this British colonial India. Now, somehow, as I was talking about the Rajbanshi and the Cooch, whether they are the same or the different caste. So the whole movement, if you look at, so the Kshatriya movement started itself with the aim that Rajbanshis are different from the Cooches. One of the claim of Panchanan Barma and the followers and the people who were involved in the Kshatriya movement. Okay, so Cooch, so we're different from. So how they're different from? So talking about food habits and many other things they talked about, let's say, and also the history and all other stuff. So what is happening somewhere prior to 1891 census, and even if you look at this time, so this is the time where the Kshatriyization movement starting or building up somewhere in 1890, back in Assam, especially Raja Khajanji was there, and some parts of North Bengal, Rangpur, mainly Rangpur was the center, So Rangpur Kshatriya Jatir Unnati Vidhani Sabha. So this is one of the, so then in 1891 census and even followed by census, so what happened that, okay, so Rajbanshis and Cooch, so whether they are separate or not, so British government, when they are conducting the survey, so they have to report it. So whether Rajbanshi and Cooch or Rajbanshis or whatever, see. So then all that, whatever the discussion were taking place. So Pandit Jadaveshwar Tarkaratna, the president of Rampur Dharma Sabha, and many people gathered and looked at the history or the arguments by Panchanan Barma, the leaders and other leaders. And so they came to conclusion that, okay, yes, Rajbanshis are Kshatriya, but we cannot claim them as Kshatriya, but the term can be used as Bratto Kshatriya. So that was the term. But what we had seen that even in the census, followed by census 1891, even 2000, next 1901, 1901, and then followed by census also, we did not find the name Bratto Kshatriya. Okay, so this is where the report, census report. So then the movement started, let's say, and the whole Kshatriyization movement, when it's after 1910, especially in 1913, the whole movement, Kshatriyization movement, Rajbanshi started wearing the sacred thread, what we call poita, so in the river Kortoya, somewhere in Jalpaiguri and all, So this is where, and Panchanan Barma, he himself was he was the editor of Rangpur Sahitya Patrika. That's the Bengali, that Bongo Sahitya Patrika. Another branch was established in Rangpur. So he was looking at that branch there. So he was the editor. So Rangpur Kshatriya Samiti. That time it was also formed in 1910. So the Kshatriya movement in 1910, the Rajbanshi caste should be recorded. So that was, so Rajbanshi caste should be recorded. So one of the main aim was also that Rajbanshi caste should be recorded. So this is where now following side by side, if you look at that time, Panchanan Barma, he did not favor the name in a way, if you look at it, he did not favor the name Rajbanshi. Rather, there is an essay, beautiful essay, he wrote that essay, Kamta Bihari Sahitya. Though he did not say that this is the name of the language, in some places he said that the name of the language should somewhere Cooch Behar. He has mentioned about Cooch Behar. He collected many riddles, folklore-related materials from North Bengal and published in Rangpur, that Rangpur Sahitya Patrika. So that things he did that time, So, but now this is where the little bit, and side by side, if you look at this Grierson linguistic survey, which is a many years survey, it was also going on. So Grierson, that whole survey, 1888, 1927 ending, huge survey, and almost 180 languages, 544 varieties, And Rajbanshi is considered to be one of the dialect of Bengali. If you look at the survey, the report and all. So we see, especially that time, Rajbanshi, when he writes, Grierson writes a Rajbanshi, S, not Sha, SH, versus Kamtapuri. So Kamtapuri, that time the distinction did not arise, Rajbanshi versus Kamtapuri, So later on, we had seen that the names, to some extent, Rajbanshi was very popularized. You can understand because Grierson himself was a big figure, linguistic, as a big linguist, let's say, and also international name and fame, administrator and all. So later on, Rajbanshi, the name of the language, it became popular, not Kamtapuri or something. And Panchanan Barma, he himself did not talk about Kamtapuri eloquently. Okay, so linguists, anthropologists, sociologists, historians, and sociologists all accept the term Rajbanshi instead of Kamtapuri and Kamtapuri. If you look at it, you see. Now, this is the second phase, let's say, of this, so to say, the movement, nomenclature things and all starting. Okay, so 1999, we see that there is a publication of a step to Kamtapuri language by Dharma Narayan Barma. And Dharma Narayan Barma, and followed by publication, even if you look at Kamtapuri Bhasha Sahitya Ruprekha, Kamtapuri Bhasha Posongo, this is followed by so Kamtapuri, Kamtapuri. At times he also writes Kamta also, Kamta Behari, Kamta Bihari, Kamtapuri. So even talking about the nomenclature, there is not one nomenclature he used. So now, Dharma Narayan Barma and his followers, Dhiren and many people, they have different kind of reasons that why this name of the language should be Kamtapuri. And we know that, somewhere Kamtapur and the language is Kamtapuri because we're talking about the region. And Kamtapur, Kamrup to Kamtapur. And they gives this reason that King Pirthu was there, and he somehow changed the capital from Kamrup to Kamtapur. So that's what the language of the administrator in those days. So it should be, the name of the language should be Kamtapuri. So, and so this is where, at the same time, undivided Assam, North Bengal, Rangpur. So this is the belt, if you're talking about Kamtapur in a way. But critics looking at Dharma Narayan Barma's claim that 1250, then we look at that 1250, then Prithu was the king of Kamrup and he died in 1228. And the war which took place in with Nasiruddin Mahmud. So 1250, now 1228, if you look at that part, you see. So there is some kind of historical mismatch, let's say. Now, Panchanan Barma has another, let's say, claim, and Dhiren and other people also support this claim that, okay, so history of Goshani Mari, especially which is there in subdivision Dinata. So, and that's the history, 15th century history. Gosani Mari was the kingdom of Kamrup, named Kamtapur. And this is the history they are referring to here, 1442, 1498. So Nildhar, Chakradhar, Nilambar. So these are the people ruled there, 1440 to 1498. And then Hussain Shah came into picture, and Hussain Shah, Nilambar somehow could not win the battle. So Hussain Shah was there in that kingdom, and Hussain Shah's son was there after that. But this later on the history, if you know that Hariya Mandal and his sons, overpowered Hussain Shah's son. And then again, this dynasty was established, the whole history, So the first king Chandan, then Vishwasingho, and the last king, if you talk about, that's the last king of, so to say, that kingdom, Jagat Dipendra Narayan, 1948. And after that, the merger took place, So this is where the whole Jagat Dipendra Narayan at August merger with India. That's what 1948, 20th August. That's what, since it was one of the princely estates, so it first merged with India in 1948, and 1950, 1st January, it became the part of West Bengal. So this is the little history. And Now, so now this part of the history, this is where many people feel it also, that this history we have not, especially in the school curriculum, it was never taught or never discussed, let's say. And somehow there is an attempt also from the Archaeological Survey of India, and they have visited to this place, Gosanimari, and did some kind of excavation back there, in Gosanimari and all, and also found very valuable kind of documents and all, So this is where the whole history. Now, the merger of the Cooch Behar state with West Bengal, and this is somewhere when this Cooch Behar, so to say, or erstwhile Kamtapur, merged with West Bengal, and slowly and gradually, the people, especially the middle class or elite Rajbanshis, they started feeling that there is a lots of gap between the administrator and somewhere the people of North Bengal. They felt it, you see. So, and as I already told you, 1950, 1st January, it was merged in with West Bengal. And somehow there was anguish of the Rajbanshi intellectuals towards injustice, negligence, exploitation, and indifference. And we had seen that also to some extent. The education, economic and other parts also were kind of neglected. Even if you look at, and it neglected for many years. So the whole North Bengal, if you look at university, how many university was there? Only North Bengal University. So, and one Kishi Vishwavidyalaya, which was established later on. So somehow people felt there are many kind of reasons also. So the Uttarakhand movement started in 1969. We look at this, and then somehow it was not successful. And then Uttar Bango Tapashili Jati or Adivashi Students Organization took up some initiatives, and especially the students movement. And it started with North Bengal University, and then it expanded. And we know this famous leader, Atul Rai, and the Kamtapur movement, Kamtapur People's Party in 1995. We see that, separate state also. And Dharma Narayan Barma's claim, somehow that time, we know that Kamtapur and Kamtapuri language. And this is the same time, if you look at Northeast India, in Assam, this Bodo movements was going on for the inclusion in the 8th schedule. Asu, Amsu, Akrashu, all that things somewhere in Northeast India, it was going on. And Bengal was witnessing this Kamtapur Liberation Organization, which is the students' wing, and the role of the left government, we all know what was the role of the left government that time, So many sympathizers or supporters of, let's say this, so to say, the Kamtapuri movement. So they were, put on jail, and the tragic story and all, we all know about that part, So we know what the left government that time they did. Now, so these are the people who are the, let's say, Kamtapuri supporters, quarters, and the theoreticians, if you look at. So beginning with, let's say, Dharma Narayan Barma. Prior to Panchanan Barma, I can't categorically say Panchanan Barma because he did not specifically say that it's Kamtapuri, but he mentioned some Kamta Bihari Shahitya. So Dharma Narayan Barma and people like Girindra Narayan Rai, professor in North Bengal University, Naren Das, one of the strong, let's say, somewhere in the Ujjash movement, Sujan Burman, he has dictionary in Kamtapuri Abhidhan, Kamtapuri dictionary. Bajle Rahman, he's the president of this Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy. Bajle Rahman is there. Dhiren Das, and many more people. These quarters and the theoreticians of this, so to say. And they have published their works in different, little magazines, periodicals, and also books, different places. So Shatal is one of them. Bagdhanuk, mostly the works there, Bagdhanuk, one of the renowned magazine there, back there. Monshua, another journal, and this another renowned professor somewhere, Nirmal Das. I think you know that Nirmal Das. He was there in Rabindra Bharati University. So why is Kamtapuri a variety of Bengali? And so somehow Nirmal Das he talks about this definitely variety of Bengali, and not only that, But instead of calling it Rajbanshi, he favors the name Kamtapuri. This is what, and he also gives his own argument, Nirmal Das. And it's book also. The first one is an article, and the second one is Lok Bhasha Theke Bhasha Lok. It's a book also. There also who raises some questions about Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri and all, And so this is where Nirmal Das also you will see. Now, so what is happening back somewhere? The formation of Rajbanshi Bhasha Academy was formed in 2012, and so which to some expedite the formation of Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy, because the supporters, they thought of, okay, so let's come up with something, and so then Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, she also promised that, yes, I'll do something, and then the Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy in 2018, it was also formed. And so they have different kind of arguments, the supporters of this, let's say the Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy, so Narayan Das and other people, So if you look at the Rajbanshi word, so Rajbanshi word is only 100 years old, 100 years, or let's say 150 years old, not more than that. And the base is somewhere in LSI, and especially in the linguistic, especially in the census reports, let's say when people started writing Rajbanshi as a separate caste. So it's 100 years or 150 years old. But if you talk about Kamtapur and Kamtapuri, so it's it's 800 years old, beginning with 1250, so somehow you have a different kind of tradition. So why not use Kamtapuri, let's say. So this is where, now this is what we had seen, that another kind of things, politics and all, Rajbanshi Bhasha Academy and then Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy 2018, and Mamata, Chief Minister Mamata here to woo Rajbanshis especially. And as I have already mentioned, and you all know that somehow language and variety of the dialect, as I already mentioned, that it's somehow not decided by the linguist or linguistic factors, but rather somewhere by the political factors. Politics decide, what is language and what is not a language. And here in this case, though it's the same language, let's say, spoken by the same people, but we got two different academy. And even these two languages are also recognized as official languages in Bengal, let's say. And so this is where, so who is adding fuel to Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri divide? Now look at the political scenario. So Kamtapur People's Party. So that are the time somewhere in prior to 2016 elections. So BJP was trying to come into, let's say, in Bengal. So if KPP joins hand with BJP or TMC, you can understand the ratio, so what will happen. And so KPP, TMC in 2016 assembly elections, they join hands, So KPP meeting in Atul Rai, in Rashmala Cooch Behar, took place, and and there itself, she announced that Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri will be given recognition. We had seen that, later on. So and Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri included in the list of official languages in Bengal in 2018. And so is there any linguistic difference between Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri? That's the question. And we all know the question, that there is nothing, no difference as such. It's the same language. So why is the decision taken by Ms. Banerjee, Chief Minister, Honorable Banerjee, or let's say the political leaders to some extent? So politics decide the recognition of language, but it's not the linguistic criteria. What are the linguistic criteria we're talking about in different levels of the grammar? So whether it's phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and all, we know all those things, criteria and all. And so the situation in India and 8 scheduled languages also, if you look at. So somehow in India, the 8 scheduled languages, the history of 8 scheduled languages, and the way, let's say, Grierson's linguistic survey, other survey were conducted. So in the 8 scheduled languages, there should be many languages. In one hand or other hand, you can say that the 8 scheduled languages should be scrapped. If you look at it, and many linguists, Professor R.K. Agnihatri and many people, they somehow say that, yes, 8th scheduled language should be scrapped, let's say. So there are many other arguments also why it should be scrapped. So there is a whole tradition. And unscheduled languages and mother tongues, in many cases, it's very bad as a linguist. Somehow the census reports, if you look at, if you have less than 10,000 speakers, and those languages are not considered or not reported, just simply reported as other tongues. So it's another tragic part. So, so we see that the kind of violation of linguistic rights and also the kind of constitutional provisions we talk about, especially in this case. Now, if you look at the constitutional safeguards and promises, let's say, especially in Constitution of India, so Article 343 to 351, we'll talk about, what are the linguistic rights and all. And especially I'm talking about Article 29. And here, if you look at, in context of Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, so any part thereof having a distinct language, script or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the same. Fine, conserve the same. But if you talk about Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, what kind of, let's say, distinct language, script or culture? Do they have different? I don't think so. Right to conserve the same, in which context even, let's say, Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri are given recognition. So these are some of the things, let's say, we know that somehow politics decide. Now, look at, let's say, the 8 scheduled languages of Indian Constitution, 22. And here, 15 languages, let's say, Indo-Aryan languages are coming into the picture, where many Austroasiatic languages, Tibeto-Burman languages, what about Andamanese, let's say, which is totally different language family. Tai-Kadai, Professor Abishi herself claiming that it should be different language family. Nicobaris, Onge, Jarwa. And we also forget sign language. Sign language itself is a different language. There should be a different family. And also, at least, Indian Constitution should recognize sign language. Try to understand that. So, somehow, Indo-Aryan dominance we see in the 8 scheduled languages out of 20 to 15. And even this Austroasiatic one, which is Santali, added in 2002. Very late introduction of Santali. Tibeto-Burman, again, Manipuri was included earlier, but another Bodo was included in again 2002. So somehow, now on the other hand, if you look at the kind of survey, and this is many linguists, they think that it's a 1961 that survey and exact report of mother tongues we find there, 1652, and census reports also we see to some extent. If you look at the census reports, I was looking at this mother tongue survey of India with Professor Kakuli Mukherjee, language division, Kolkata, and we found that the raw figure, the raw data of mother tongue languages or mother tongues were 6,661. That should not be the case. It's not 6,061. It was the raw data. And then if you just look at, so approximately it comes around mother tongue 1652 or 1700 or something, So, and another interesting things are that from 1971 onwards, the Census Commissioner was advised to drop the list of languages with less than 10,000 speakers, which is really tragic and sad, especially as a linguist, let's say. And in the other hand, let's say in India's looking at the dynamics, diversity and all. So over 87 languages are used in print media. If you look at India's scenario, 71 languages are used in the radio. Maybe the number is more nowadays. And 13 different languages, let's say. And even Sahitya Academy, if you talk about Sahitya Academy, even Rajbanshi, Professor Girija Shankar Rai, he got this, Sahitya Academy Award because of his contribution and all. So Sahitya Academy is not 22 languages, but it recognizes more than 35 languages also, if you look at it, the Sahitya Academy and all. So there are, So this is where 22 languages, as I was talking about, the kind of distribution and all. And now list of languages which are to be included in the 8 scheduled languages. There is a huge list also. And this list is also increasing. So, and you will see somewhere Kamtapuri list in this list, 20, and this list, it goes this way or that way. Once it was made 16, and many people back in back in North Bengal, they feel that, oh, our list is somehow, coming, on top. Let's say earlier it was 20, it came to 16. So they are very, very happy, but it was not the case. It was somewhere the alphabetical arrangements and something, So this is where, and look at in 2014, this BJP MP, this Ahluwalia, so raises the Kamtapuri language issues in Parliament in 2014. This is the screenshot, and followed by that, you'll see that this is another case where demand for Rajbanshi for inclusion in the 8 scheduled languages, and this is our MP, ex-MP, not present MP. So Mr. Pathapotim Roy, so he also raises this, that Rajbanshi should be included in the 8 schedule, So this is where in 2018, this is where in 2018 is taking place. And so Rajbanshi supporter or quarter, if you look at, and following Grierson's linguistic survey, LSI, and so many people, many academicians, they favor the term Rajbanshi, and one of the persons, now he is no more, ex-additional director of Central Institute of Indian Languages, Professor Satyendranath Barman, and noted writer, Professor Niklesh Roy, Deepak Kumar Roy, Dijendranath Bhakot back in Assam, but somehow they mix both Rajbanshi. Jyotirmay Pradhani also will somehow favor the term, Rajbanshi and all, and there are many more people, let's say, and then followers of Rajbanshi Research Academy. You will see there are people, many young scholars, so they would like to call the name of the language Rajbanshi, and there are many magazines, not only magazine, you will say periodicals and all. So Degar, edited by Professor Niklesh Roy, Bhoga also, and many Rajbanshi Bhasha Academy itself, let's say, comes with different books, short story books, dictionary. Recently, I think the trilingual dictionary is also, I think it's published, Rajbanshi, Bangla and Hindi. I think that's the trilingual dictionary they came up with. Also prepared text, primary textbook, because Rajbanshi will have to be taught in the primary schools in North Bengal. So they have also prepared those, textbooks as well, So, and arguments for Rajbanshi also, many people, they have different kind of arguments, but many people say that, yes, somehow Grierson, best famous linguist, and based on his report, and who should decide the name of the language? It's basically the people. And Grierson did not consider, let's say, to some extent. So it is, he has given the name based on the people, let's say, what they said. So people said that, okay, it's Rajbanshi. That's what he reported it as Rajbanshi, So it's the name of the language, and other people say that, yes, it's the name of the language. It's not the name of the caste we are talking about here, because Rajbanshi has two kinds of connotation. One is the caste, and at the same time, another is the language. So don't confuse with Rajbanshi caste and Rajbanshi language. When you talk about Rajbanshi language, it is for everyone, let's say, to some extent. The inhabitants of North Bengal, Rajbanshi community, whether it's Muslims, whether it is the other Bengalis and all. So it's okay. So we have a wider connotation of Rajbanshi as a language. Okay, so this is where the arguments. So the same argument, let's say Assamese. So it's not only spoken by the Ahom, let's say, but Bodo, Ahom, Muslims, and other caste Hindus, and Tibeto-Burman group also, they also speak Rajbanshi, Assamese for that matter, you see. So different kind of arguments, arguments for Kamtapuri, arguments for, as well as, Rajbanshi. people try to give, and Panchanan Barma, as I mentioned initially that, Kamta Bihari Sahitya in Rangpur Sahitya Patrika in 1907. And another term also he used, Cooch Behar. And Dharma Narayan Barma, if you talk about step to Kamtabihari language, Kamtapuri Bhasha or Sahitya Ruprekha. So one is Kamtabihari, and it's Kamtapuri, and Dhiren Das, Sujan Barman, Naren Das, Ajit Kumar Barma, Amulya Debna, and many more, So they have their own arguments for Kamtapuri and all, and many supporters, for that matter, you see. And Nirmal Das also argues in favor of Kamtapuri, because he says that the term itself, Rajbanshi, suffers in logical fallacies. So one is it is too narrow and too wide, because if you call Rajbanshi, then who speaks? It's at the same time you have Deshi, Polia, Khen, caste Hindus, and also Muslims. So it's basically too narrow. That's the argument Nirmal Das, And Rajbanshis in the south also, there are caste in Rajbanshi, mainly the fisherman community. So they also speaks also one of the Rari dialect of Bengali. So instead of calling it Rajbanshi, he favors the term Kamtapuri. But Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, if you look at Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, ODBL, Origin and Development of Bengali Language. So he says that somehow it's Kamrupi. That's the Kamrupi variety of the Kamrupi dialect of Bengali. So now try to understand this whole, this is the proponents of this, so to say, the Kamtapuri. And this is where I'm talking about the script. So Dharma Narayan Barma proposes this script, which is distinct or different from, to some extent, different from Bangla. So A, A, E, but so this is what the script. But in reality, which is being proposed by Dharma Narayan Barma, it is not being practiced. Okay, but Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy, they have come up with some script, and they claim that even Unicode has acknowledged that script, and somehow only for some symbols, so one is, let's say, A. So for A, they are using different symbol, A and A, basically. I don't see not much difference with Bangla, the same thing and all. Okay. So this is one of the letters issued by Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy. So this is, I was just looking at, is there any difference and all with Bangla, and as well as with Rajbanshi, the script, by the Rajbanshi Academy and all. So nothing. So the nomenclature debate, it continues, but somehow, so we have now many names. From many names, we have come to two names, let's say. One is Rajbanshi and another is Kamtapuri. So earlier it was many, Kamta, Kamtabihari, Kamtapuri, Cooch Behar, Kamtai, and also Bahe also. There was a time Bahe was also used by Grierson, and there was a revolt in North Bengal as well, because Bahe is the address term, especially Rajbanshi community, they use Bahe, so there is a protest against the use of Bahe. So Grierson has to revise that, part later on. So, and Muitui Bangla, Deshi Bangla, Northern Bengali, Grierson uses even Northern Bengali, not necessarily it's Rajbanshi. It's not referring Northern Bengali as Rajbanshi, because Northern Bengali is different. So referring to the another variety. And Rangpuri, Gwalparia, Koch Rajbanshi, Shujjapuria, and Vishnupuria also, some, especially in Bihar also, some people, they claim that, okay, it is the variety of Rajbanshi, something like that. So these are, so all this complicated nomenclature, names, somehow now let's say we came to two only, Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, and the debate continues, the saga continues. Now looking at language and dialect, the kind of politics, as we all know, so standard language, and just quoting Professor Max Weinreich, famous sociolinguist, as you know, that a language is a dialect that is an army and a navy. So all that kind of support you do have, which is backing language, but in general dialect, you do not have that kind of support. So metaphorically, if you talk about language as a dialect that is an army and a navy. So the standard language is idealized variety accepted as official language of their community or country, taught in schools, printed in newspaper, books, and magazine as well. Education and broadcasting in public context, written language, state support. So these are some of the things we can think about as standard language, and also the separate history, cultural aspects also you can bring into. And the criteria, linguistic criteria we talk about in general. So the mutual intelligibility criteria. So if we apply the mutual intelligibility criteria for Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, not even 1% thing, we'll find. Not even 1.009%, so you'll not find different. Lexical vocabulary comparability, the same. History, culture, and written language. History, culture, and also the same thing. I was talking about the written language, and only written case, what we see that only one alphabets, let's say, somehow they are using different, and others are the same thing, So this whole thing, so Hindi Urdu controversy we had already know, and Chandramallika, she has also talked, Sengupta also talked about that Hindi Urdu. We know the whole history of Hindi Urdu, and Lao, Thai, Serbian, and Croatian. Earlier it was considered to be the dialects, so then creation of Serbia and Croatia, it became two different languages. Chinese, Mandarin, Hakka, Sentilamese. We know the cases that's also there. So mutual intelligibility criteria also fails there. So because they want to be under the same nation. So different kind of, so what is the important criterion? It's basically politics and polity. And linguistically speaking, even standard language is a dialect. This is our understanding, Even standard language is a dialect. This is what Weinreich also talking about. So no one dialect or language is better, more correct, more logical than any other. This is our understanding as a linguist, But the societal level understanding or conceptions are totally different. So is there any linguistic difference? Let's say, though Rajbanshi is considered to be a variety of, so to say, the standard Bangla. So Panchanan, Dharma Narayan Barma, on the other hand, says that Bangla, it started somewhere in the 18th century or 19th century. But if you talk about Rajbanshi, so he refers to the text of Charjapat. So the text of Charjapat, the Buddhist mystic songs, so it's always, all these languages are taking credit. Bangla is also saying that these are old text. Odia also says the same thing, Odia language, as well as Assamese also. So somehow, if you talk about the origin of Bengali and all, so Vidyasagar and other things we all know. Now, I was just simply looking at the pronouns of Bangla and pronouns of Rajbanshi, or let's say Kamtapuri, because mostly I use slash in my writings, Rajbanshi / Kamtapuri. So looking at singular and plural, first person, second person, and third person, and you see there is a huge difference between these two varieties. If you're talking about mutual intelligibility, in my understanding, there is no mutual intelligibility, except, and since it's an Indo-Aryan language, you will find there are some kind of mutual intelligibility because the mother language, descending from the mother language, you'll find it. But there is a huge difference in the pronominal systems as well. And even talking about the agreement pattern also, if you talk about in general. So the kind of dixies we are talking about in Bangla, dictic pronouns here, third person, A, O, she, we don't have these three distinctions. I'm talking about the Rajbanshi variety, which is spoken in Cooch Behar. So A, O, and she, you have two, and tui tomra. Even if you talk about the second person, in Bangla, standard Bangla, you have three, tui, tumi, apni. It's simply you have tui and tomra. And this tomra, what is the plural in Bangla? It is not the plural here. It has dual functions. One is plural, and at the same time, it is the honorific one. Okay, so that Hamra and Amra is basically the variations, regional variation. In some places it is called Hamra, and some places it is called Amra. I'm talking about first person plural. Okay, so regional variations you may also find it. You see, so if you look at the pronominal systems, there is a huge difference. Okay, so you can argue that is variety, but and also Same kind of, let's say, Assamese also you will see that, somehow more close to Assamese. Professor Chandra Mallika, to some extent, she is right, more close to Assamese than Bangla, if you look at it, pronominal systems. Now, even I'm just referring at the future tense marker, and with the verb go, so mui jaim, let's say. So in Bangla, what is happening? It's only the future tense marker. I'm talking about the morpheme here, ba. And in Rajbanshi, it's not only that, you have ba and ma. Again, this ma is epenthesized one. So mui khaim, mui jaim. So it's in the first person. So it's not in Bangla, let's say ami khabo, ami jabo. All cases, it is ba. But you have two marker here. One is ma, which is again epenthesized, depending on the variety, and another is ba. Okay, so this is where the difference is just simply showing. I could have shown with Assamese as well, but the time limitations and all. So in body parts, if you look, just giving some examples of body parts, let's say hath, hand, hath is fine. Tang, let's say. In Rajbanshi, tang, which is tang, let's say. So more close to Hindi here. Pa in Bangla, nogul, angul, ungli. I'm talking Hindi, trying to give this Upper Vangsh, Magadhi type. And nail, let's say, nakun, knock, and shipi, dhaknai, which is totally different word. Hotalai, talking about chin, the chivuga thutni, and in Hindi, even elbow, let's say, and even for this navel, navi, hatua, yeah, there is a similarity, hatu, but so you'll find there are many cases, and just referring to body parts, some of the body part items and all, and we find huge differences if you talk about Bangla, and as well as the Rajbanshi and the Kamtapuri variety I'm talking about, and in different levels of the lexicons also, reduplications and all, So I keep on writing, let's say, some of my either poems or short stories, my novels also, it's not easily understood by the Bengalis to some extent, you see. And now, so the problem with nomenclature, we have seen that, and the kind of Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri things we talk about. And another thing, that's the important thing I want to talk about, Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri has been treated rather shabbily by the censors of India. So this is the point I want to focus here. And it is very surprising and disturbing, especially if you look at that shabbily, the way it is being represented in the census of India. So population of mother tongue and 1961 to 2001, here the report, and I'm giving the data from this district census handbook, Linguistic Survey of India. It is uploaded there, and you can see that. So all these languages, Bengali, Hindi, Telugu, Sadri, Bhojpuri, Orao, or Kurup, Nepali, Gorkhali, Santali, and then let's say it comes Cooch Behar district. So Marwari Rajbanshi, so number 10, how many speakers in 1961? 80. So look at this, like in 1961, 208, 422, 644, and 770 Rajbanshi, 1122 speakers. In one village, let's say, in Cooch Behar, let's say if there is a constituency back there, so almost 70 to 80% population, they speak Rajbanshi, but somehow the figure is there, only 1122. So it is not also the fault of the, let's say, census reporters also. We cannot claim to say that, okay, it is their fault. The way maybe they're asking questions, that maybe has to be relooked into, number one. The other thing, maybe people are also not giving the name of the language or their mother tongue to some extent. Okay, so they may be, because of this social mobility, prestige factors and other things, they may be simply saying they speak Bangla. That could be also one reason. So the important things, what we need to keep in mind is that we need to reframe those questions. The people who are collecting, data from the ground root, from the grassroots level and all. So again, talk about Jalpaiguri district, and Jalpaiguri district, even if we look at Rajbanshi and all, 1863, 673, and then only few. And in 1971, it did not report also that So this is the number. If you look at the number, and again, Darjeeling district, coming back to Darjeeling district, and Rajbanshi 2534, especially in the area of Naksalbari. Even in Shiv Mandir, if you go to Shiv Mandir, that's the university where university is situated, North Bengal University. Huge population back there, but census report and all. So it's a shabbily represented report. Even talk about Dinajpur, whether it's Uttar Dinajpur and Dakhin Dinajpur, almost the same kind of saga continues. Rajbanshi 00 there, 1073 not being reported also. So very bad, let's say, talk about this representation and all. So now this is where, yeah, Dakshin Dinajpur, and same thing with this Santali Malda district also you will see this. And okay, and Rajbanshi mother tongue in India and West Bengal. Now if you try to look at this, let's say somehow in India, in this district census handbook, it is reported that in India 82570, the total number of Rajbanshi speakers. That's not the case. Million speakers are there. And in West Bengal this, Jalpaiguri this, then that's the figure. And Howrah, Hooghly, Kolkata saying 18. I know at least, let's say 18 families in Kolkata, or maybe more than that, so only 18. So it is again, yeah. So somewhere shabbily representations, and talking about Rajbanshi and the Kamtapuri, both the communities, or let's say the same community, or the people, let's say, the supporters of this and that. So they don't talk to each other, one another. And it's really a confusing situation that the state government has given the recognition to Rajbanshi as well as Kamtapuri language, though it is not the same language. It is the same language, basically. And speakers of this language are divided for various reasons, and they justify their allegiance to one nomenclature, either Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri. And whatever the reasons, we know what are the reasons, behind it. On the other hand, many educated Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri speakers accepted Bengali as their mother tongues, and they do not speak Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri in front of the children. That is another harsh reality. They are talking about Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri. The movements are everything they're doing, but at the same time, they do not want, they don't want to teach their children Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri. That is another, and they also don't talk to their children. Another agony, so. And it is not only with Rajbanshi. We had seen different, those lesser known or minority languages with India also, the same kind of tendency being practiced, by the speakers. And now, so there are some people that think that, yeah, so enough politics is being played. Now the water is too muddy. So why not bring these two, Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, together? So you will see that different social groups, so Kamtapuri Rajbanshi Bhasha Prachar Samiti, so they're talking about both, has to come together. So we need to talk to one another. Kamtapuri Rajbanshi Samonai Committee, there is an attempt to bring these two people together, So, and there are many people thinking that, okay, we should come together and form one. So these are some of the groups that I'm simply mentioning here. Rajbanshi Kamtapuri Language and Culture Organization, Amra Shogai, Aktai Kamtapuri, Cooch Behari, Coach Rajbanshi, Bhumiputro, son of the soil, Proud to be Rajbanshi, we are Kamtapuri. So this is where all that kind of things. And so even talking about my own writings and all, whether I write in English, so mostly I use the term Rajbanshi/Kamtapuri, and maybe many people, because of that also, that okay, so you should use only one, but instead of creating the gap, again widening the gap, rather we should bridge the gap. That's what my understanding. So all these books so far I have written, so whether it is not the first one. The first one is mainly, it's an English one. So this short stories, collection of short stories, my own collection of short stories. And so this is what also I used Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri / even this 2021 again, Pil Pil Kill Bill collection of Rajbanshi children rhymes. So Kamtapuri, I also use this, Bhurut Bawai also, if you talk about, also this I use /. kutur kutur kuttu kutur, even this again, I use slash there as well in the, and Huplung Dablang, that's also, that's a short story written of my own collections and all. So it's also, I use, basically the slash thing and all, so, and many people back in North Bengal, they use slashing, so that we can bridge the gap instead of widening the gap. So present dynamics, especially, that's our Shukbilash Barma, one of the retired IAS officers and famous research scholar as well, Bahawiya singer back in Bengal, also MP from Jalpaiguri. He was not present MP, last time MP from Jalpaiguri. So that's what he says, that both BJP and TMC have been trying to cash on sentimental modes of section of Rajbanshi upper middle class who have often believed in the bluffs played by the political leaders. That's also a very strong claim. And plan for inclusion of Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri in the primary schools of North Bengal. We had seen that recently, not really recently, in 2018. Recently, Mamata Banerjee, Chief Minister, she has visited, and so both the academy, they're claiming that textbooks are prepared by both the academics, and so they're planning to introduce it in the school curriculum. And Atul Ray, though he's no more, he died in 2021, and that's what others. And Dharma Narayan Barma, he's got this Padma Shri award, from Government of India. So you look at the other aspects also there. And something happening, Rajbanshi Bhasha certificate course also being taught in Cooch Behar Panchanan Barma University. And that was the time, let's say, especially for course development of the course content and all. Dr. Sengupta was also there, so I was also there. Satyan Barma and other people are also there, so that's and recent dynamics, let's say, it's unfolding in a different manner, let's say. So recently in one of the he was campaigning, and then because after the election we had seen that in North Bengal people are demanding for a different state, that kind of, and so many people to some extent now this claim is not Kamtapur state, the claim is a different state, let's say. And Udayan Guha recently says that whoever tries to create a different state, I'm going to break their legs and all, So that's what. So now in some places of North Bengal, there is a protest going on also. That's what. And recently, just few days back, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee also, she visited back in North Bengal. In Baneshwar, she also shared the dice with Anantarai Maharaj, and greater Cooch Behar leader. And we do not know how this politics back there unfolds, and what will be the future of, so to say, this Rajbanshi language or the Kamtapuri language, and what kind of, let's say, quality of these textbooks which are prepared by both the academics, both the academy. I am telling it because I don't know, because what kind of quality, because you need kind of expert hand also. So whether can it be taught, let's say, or do we need proper kind of committee to look into this syllabus, the way it is being designed, the way it is being written, So before we destroy the young minds, we need to apply our minds as well, So one thing what we have understood, that the problem of nomenclature, where we had earlier lots of, now it came down to two, so Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, and what we have understood, the kind of shabbily, the way it is being represented in the census of India, talking about Rajbanshi, and Kamtapuri doesn't figure out in the census, let's say. Somehow Rajbanshi figures out, Kamtapuri will not find any mention somewhere, and because again, let's say 10,000 and less. Maybe in 2011 there was an attempt to make it somewhere in the census of India, but if it is less than 10,000, so those officers will not report it, So on the other hand, the kind of understanding that Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri speakers feel that their identity is in danger in West Bengal because of the dominant Bengali language. And it's not only about Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri they feel, because this is my also experience working in different places, let's say in India. So most of the minority communities, they feel because this kind of linguistic imperialism is going on. So on the one hand, if you talk about the dominant language, English, or the state dominant language also, to some extent is there, the kind of imposition of the state dominant language. So the community, the lesser known language communities, they feel it, and somehow demand for Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri language and as a distinct language. So how this present dynamics will, let's say, unfold. So the time will tell us how it unfolds, but it's a really complex history, complex saga, which is going on in North Bengal. And so this is what, for this, I got the reference of many books, many articles and all, so references, some of the references just mentioning. And at the same time, and so thank you all for listening, and Dhanyavad. So, okay, so it's over to you, Professor Amitabh Chakraborty and Dr. Chandramali Sengupta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Roy. This is the second time I'm listening to your lecture, and I found it immensely engrossing for the last 1 hour. I think most of us were engrossed in whatever you're saying. Though I'm not much into linguistics, but little that I do understand, I would just like to briefly say a few words about your lecture before we go on to the questionnaire session. Well, I found your lecture to be extremely informative because you made it very clear why understanding the historical and cultural perspective is very important when we are discussing about the linguistic aspects of any particular language, because without understanding that, a ground reality cannot be assessed properly. And probably the data sheets that you have provided, so many of the projections you have given us, that actually helped us, many of us who are not linguists, helped us to understand why it is so very important to have idea about the historical and cultural backgrounds. I found your lecture to be also very bold and straightforward. First, because you pointed out a very important issue that, the confusion arises when the name of the language and the name of the caste are interjuxtaposed, and they're confused between the two. So you made it very clear why those two are not different, why those two are different, and why those two not be accepted as the same. So that was an extremely important and straightforward point which we needed to know. And of course, a very, very bold statement about how politics plays a part in determining the status of any language. And in the case of today's topic, Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, probably this political intervention also is adding fuel to the conflict, which I probably feel you said very rightly and very boldly. And though your lecture is titled Unending Saga, but towards the end of your lecture, when you mentioned that you are trying to bridge the gap by writing Rajbanshi/Kamtapuri, so that I found a very, very nice approach, because it is always better to try to come in terms with the situation, the ground reality, and handle the conflict instead of flaring it up for anyone's or any personal reason or any other political or societal reasons. So that I must congratulate you that it was a very informative, it was a very, very straightforward, bold, and it was a very honest presentation, and your effort in trying to bridge the gap between the two. So on behalf of International Society for Bengal Studies, we extend our gratitude and thanks to you for this very illuminating 1 hour session. We have with us here quite a number of speakers, and I would quite a number of participants, I should say. And now I would request anyone to ask any question if there is any. Dr. Roy will be there to answer your questions. Participants, may I request any of you to put forward your questions, please. If there is any question, please feel free to ask Dr. Roy.
Dr. Rai, thank you very much. I congratulate you for your very informative lecture. Actually, I don't have much exposure to the Rajbanshi language. I got lots of information from your lecture. As far as I remember, you mentioned some names as the alternative names of Rajbanshi: Gwalparia, Surjapuri, Rangpuri, Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes.
So I want to know, do you think that Gwalparia, that is the same, and that can be an alternative name of Rajbanshi? I think it is spoken in Gwalpara area of Assam. Similarly, Rangpuri, that is also in Bangladesh, and Shujapuri, that is in Bihar. So how do you use these nomenclatures for Rajbanshi?
It is basically.
People are there, yeah.
Yes.
Rajbanshi people are there, but the varieties, I don't think are the same.
Yes, ma'am. So it is basically the same. If you talk about the Gwalparia songs and all by Pratima Pandey Borua, you must have heard about Pratima Pandey Borua, famous, that Rajbanshi Bhawiya singer. So somehow the song and the lyrics and everything, let's say, Aji, let's say, whether you talk about Fande Poria Boga Kandere, or if you look at, let's say, linguistically try to analyze the structure of Rangpuri variety or Gwalpari variety or the Cooch Behar variety, what we call Rajbanshi variety, is basically same. There is not much differences. Not much, like there is no differences, except, let's say, when I was conducting a survey, because I myself was working on varieties of Rajbanshi, one of the projects by this, this university, UGC Grant Commission and all. So in present progressive, one things I found, especially the difference is that, so in Rajbanshi variety, which is spoken in Rangpur as well as in Cooch Behar, let's say for present progressive. So they say, in Bangla, I say, Ami bhat khachi. Okay, Ami bhat khachi, but khaitechi. Some people say khaitasi.
That is literally Bengali, in colloquial standard Bengali, khachi.
Khachi.
So this, okay, I understand. Sorry for interrupting you. I understand your point. Then that means, do you consider the Rajbanshi that is spoken in Cooch Behar, that means in North Bengal, one variety?
See, ma'am, let's say.
And then in that case, there is the question of the standard one, which one has been standardized. Maybe that is Cooch Behar variety, because literary activities are there. And I have seen there are lots of contribution in Rajbanshi. Have you written one grammar also?
Just see, look at, ma'am, talking about the variation. If you look at variations, the two levels variation in linguistics, as we all know, that one is regional variations and another is social variations. Okay. So in Hindi, there is a proverb that do kosh mein badalta hai bani, teen kosh mein badalta hai pani. We all know that language varies depending on the regions and all. Now, if you look at in general, let's say, the Jalpaiguri variety is little different, Rajbanshi variety is little different, as well as, let's say, Gwalpari. There is not much difference, only to some extent in lexical levels. Let's say I can give lots of examples for, let's say, one word, let's say for guava. In Bangla, it is called peara. Guava is peara. In my variety, the Rajbanshi variety, which is spoken in Cooch Behar, it is called shupri. Guava is shupri. But in Jalpaiguri variety, it is called tam, let's say. It's called tam. It's called tam. So somewhere the variation, let's say, you will find little bit of variation. Talking about the standardization is not our job. Please try to understand that part. Standardization has to be done by the research academy, whether it's Kamtapuri Research Academy or the whatever or Rajbanshi Academy. It is not our job, let's say. What we do, let's say, in general, Rajbanshi Bhasha Academy, Nikhilesh Roy, as well as Deepak Kumar Rai. So when they get this, let's say, enough articles or poems from different places, so they have not, to some extent, have taken that standardization process that, okay, we need to continue this variety or that variety. So people of Cooch Behar, let's say, if their variety is not there, so they'll feel bad at the same time. At the same time, the Jalpaiguri people will feel bad. So it's a collective decision one has to take. And this decision has to be taken by the academy, in my understanding. And that's way, all the standardization process, it's a calculated process. It's a calculated process.
Yeah, that is true. And that standardization takes place in course of time. That is the that is the effort, collective effort, okay, and that takes place in course of time. That is true. But since you have given that example in with reference to Bengali, if I say that there are, you see, notional dialect names are there, Bengali, Kamrupi, Jharkhandi, and all these. So if I say that Bengali and Jharkhandi are the same, the alternative name of Bengali, will you agree?
See, now the whole idea of standard, let's say linguistically speaking, basically Bengali itself is a dialect, let's say. How do you look at this dialect? The Bengali, the standard Bengali, what you are talking about, let's say for time being, try to understand the same thing. For time being, the Bengal would not have been the center, let's say Kolkata would not have been the center of the power to some extent, and Kamrup would have been the center of power. Maybe this Kamtapuri variety would have established. We all understand that. Talk about
true, but since standard Bengali is based on Calcutta variety, but not only the Calcutta variety, Calcutta plus some other features are also from other varieties also that has been accommodated in the standard Bengali. And
it is slowly accommodated because Bengal got expansion, let's say. This case also, let's say, if it is established, let's say, this Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri, which is being established, and once we have the written literature, and the written literature is developing, and it's a huge literature. Literature, if you talk about, many people, they have translated from other languages, also from Bangla. Recently, one person has translated Gitanjali and Rajbanshi, let's say. So the huge translation is there. And all of us, let's say, all of us, I'm talking about the people of North Bengal, they're creating, let's say, the literature in different places. So one day, that's what I'm saying, one day, whichever the academy, they should sit together and go for the standardization process. That, okay, whether is the lexical variation, let's say for guava, supuri, or let's say tam, which should be taken, or peara, which should be taken as the standard one. Let's say for the spelling also, this spelling is, we are not going to take this spelling. And that's what, even in Bangla standardization process also, we have seen the same thing. Let's say Rabindranath Tagore himself, he came up with these rules, okay? Whether to write a or a, let's say hollow with o, or only simple with la.
It is a continuous process.
It's a continuous process. So
I agree with you. So just for clarification, I raised this question. And one more thing, Kamtapuri Academy is also there, as you mentioned, that was established in 2018. Then what are their activities? Are there any literary activities, remarkable literary activities?
To be very frank, ma'am, I was myself there in one of the seminar, you can say that. So I was being invited there to talk about grammar and especially dictionary making and all. So so I think some kind of activities are going on, and they have been doing different kind of, let's say, workshops, seminars, and all that kind of things, you know, to come up with. And recently they have also published this primary textbooks. And president of Kamtapuri Academy, I think Bazli Rahman, he himself, I think, met with Chief Minister and all other people who are in the committee, and they submitted all these primary textbooks. And recently, that's what Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is saying, that we will introduce it especially in the primary schools back in North Bengal, you know. So that's the promise given by Chief Minister. So these are the things, let's say, it's a very initial process. It started down the line after 50 years, let's say. That's what I ended my talk, that how this whole saga unfolds, the time will tell. We can't.
That is true.
This is
who knows what will happen in future?
What will happen in future? You never know. This thing, whole thing, is submerged with Bengali. You never know. Because on the other hand, we have to understand the same thing, the kind of linguistic imperialism we are facing. And it's not only about Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri. Try to understand this phenomena. It's not only about linguistic, and Bangla to some extent. Try to understand this Bangla, the kind of Bangla we are talking about, madam. Bangla, which was the Bangla of Bankim Chandra. So Sharad Chandra totally radically changed Bangla. So
that is a Very good. That will take place in all languages, and that happens.
It will happen. Language itself is so dynamic and all. So even the standardization process, in my understanding, it will take place. And if there is strong motive of the people back in Bengal, we are hopeful that something positive will come up. One thing I, as a linguist, or let's say as a speaker of Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri, I feel that especially the nomenclature distinction and the kind of politics being played for this nomenclature, that should not be continued now, in my understanding. And people of both the groups should come together and discuss about this. They should submit a representation to the Chief Minister of Bengal that yes, it is not this, or maybe we want to write this, and maybe after 10 years or 15 years we'll decide that and all. So it's unnecessary politics. That's what my.
Thank you.
Amitabh, your question, please.
No, Chandramouli, I don't have a question.
Okay, you raised your hand, then whatever.
No, but
points
I
you
raised
make.
raised my hand because okay, Horimadhav, and you could see that I'm not pronouncing as Harimadhav. This whole lecture series, I think we thought of it because so that we can hear from people who are dealing with languages. And I must thank you for coming forward with comments, points, which I don't think usually any teacher teaching in an institution will like to say publicly. I'll just add to you your points, 3 things. You made a very interesting point about Shupuri and Guava. I'm a Sileti. So we always knew that Guava is Shopri. Only in our classrooms we knew it as Peara. The second thing, that's just my hunch. You also raised the point how politically language and dialect identities are decided. I believe that in another 100 years, the Dhaka standard colloquial will also become a very important standard colloquial of Bangla. Even if you go today, if you attend, if you listen to the political discussions, public presentations, and TV shows, because I'm a Sileti, I had to go through that whole process of being able to or try to pronounce proper quote-unquote Bangla. So Dhaka Bangla teachers don't bother about it. In the Dhaka University, those who teach Bangla, I think I have found only 3 teachers who try to pronounce standard colloquial Bangla as we know it here. Otherwise, they will, even in their public discussion, they will say Dakhan, Chaldean. I'm putting this point not to judge, as you have already very nicely pointed out. As linguistics, we are not supposed to judge. We must understand the history of language is also the history of politics. And because Dhaka has become a center, I'm sure in another 50 to, I'm saying 100, I don't think we'll have to wait for another 100 years. I think within 50 years, there will be a different standard colloquial of Bangla as well, like Australian and American English.
Yes, sir. To add your point, if you look at it, sir, let's say if you talk about Hindi, let's say in Indian context,
exactly.
Hindi, Hindustani, let's say the kind of Hindustani, the Khadiboli variety, which is standardized, let's say. Now the Hindi, let's say later on Hindi, Urdu, 2 different languages. And now if you listen to Urdu, let's say radio or television, and Urdu, which is used in Pakistan, sir, let's say the word Pradhan.
Totally different.
Pradhan Mantri, Pradhan Mantri, what is the word they use? Totally different word. So down the line, what we had seen that Hindi has heavily borrowed from Sanskritized sources and Urdu heavily borrowed from, let's say,
because as linguists, Harimadhav, we know that, I mean, differentiation between dialect and language is a political choice. Not a choice even, a situation. And that's why I just wanted to add this point. Since 2008, I have been visiting Bangladesh for at least 3 times a year. Bengali teachers of Dhaka University, apart from 2 or 3, don't really, okay, I didn't want to say that, so I'm suppressing my expression. Bother about whether you say Deccan, Chaldean, right? But the fact that Dhaka has become a center, a political center and also a cultural center, hence I think we will have to agree that there will be 2 standard colloquial Bengalis in another 100 years. That's power politics. You can't stop it, right?
So that's what, sir, like talking about this part also cannot predict language, how the way the dynamics will unfold.
Exactly.
Cannot predict language change.
But I have one objection to one of your points. When you are requesting or arguing that we must request a particular leader or any leader to don't do politics with language, I think that's too idealistic. When did language happen without politics? That's the point. But thank you, because we don't have too many academicians in this country who can speak their mind with argument like you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Amitav. Now we have Indranil Lotto. A question or a comment from you?
No, I didn't ask him a question. I think
no, I'm not talking about you. There's a hand raised by Indranil Lotto.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So whether Indranil Lotto, please, any question or any comment, please unmute and speak.
I think it's unmute. Please, it's, I think, mute. Professor Dattu, could you unmute? Unmute, sir.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, sir. Please unmute.
Since you are using the earphone, please click the Wi-Fi or cellular data link. That will actually make you audible to us. Or you just take off the headphone and speak directly. That will also will be audible to us.
Yeah, is that better or?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Yeah,
okay.
You are audible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hari. And that was a very enlightening talk. I learned a lot about. I mean, what? So I don't really have a question so much as an invitation for you to sort of think about something. And that is that, 2 things. One, we all sort of traverse, we all sort of code switch between so many different sort of social acts, if you will. So I'm assuming that that level of sort of shifting between registers must also be true for Rajbanshi, right? So what I would want you to sort of think along with me, if you will, is what really happens when we think of a continuum within which, let's say, for argument's sake, on the one end you have Rajbanshi and on the other end you have Kamtapuri. So are there any sort of overt attempts to sort of amplify these differences, or whatever little difference that may exist? Are there any sort of attempts to sort of amplify those, right? Because that would probably end up making things go in a sort of a divergent pattern, right? While we know that languages basically do not really obey sort of what we think that they should, right? They don't really converge or diverge according to our own free will. So I was wondering if you could sort of think about it and sort of tell us a little bit about, are there any sort of overt attempts to sort of amplify whatever little differences that there might be? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's really interesting question, sir. And talking about Rajbanshi-Kamtapuri, as we all know that there would be own any kind of, let's say, code switching or code mixing, because it's the same thing. But if you're talking about Rajbanshi and Bangla, let's say, yes, definitely it's happening, taking place. And at the same time, let's say, and also it depends, let's say, because Rajbanshi, which is spoken in, let's say, Assam, so Assamese in that region, they'll totally switch to, let's say, Assamese variety, the Rajbanshi speakers and Kokrajhar and all, and here, let's say, standard Bangla, they will switch on to standard Bangla. And within the Bangla also, if you talk about the northern variety of Bangla, it's to some extent different. The way, Bangla is spoken in North Bengal and the Bangla is spoken, the standard Bangla, what Suniti Kumar Chatterjee talked about northern Bengali, because northern Bengali has different kind of characteristics, and this is where many North Bengalis, they feel it when they come to, let's say, Kolkata. Many people easily identify themselves because, are you from North Bengal? Even if they speak the standard Bengali. So it happens basically. It totally happens, as you are talking about the kind of registers, switching between registers and all. So in the rural areas, I had seen and visited those rural areas. And mainly, let's say, people, rural areas, those many illiterate, let's say, uneducated and all. So somehow the uneducated one I'm talking about, let's say, some people from, let's say, from other places, let's say from Kolkata, they are visiting to the rural areas. They will try to speak in standard Bangla, but the standard Bangla, the kind of Bangla they speak, it's so funny, Basically, they are speaking Rajbanshi with few words, let's say, Bangla, So that kind of attempt is also made, you see, talking about the social mobility factors, if you look at, in general, because as a speaker, we try to identify ourselves as the standard variety, that's what our field work also, because you have also conducted many field work. We always try to kind of give our identity that we speak the standard variety, not the other variety or the sub or the dialect variety or something. So this kind of constant attempt is being made by the speakers of Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri, whatever you say. But since it's not a different language, no way, as a linguist, let's say, no way you can't say that no way you can say that it's two different languages. And registers, switching of register, code mixing and code switching, there's no question of that, sir.
Okay, we also have Dr. Shomir Kormokar. Dr. Kormokar, your comment or question, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, Hari. Thanks once again, because it's a nice talk, and the way you have put it, it's really bold, and probably in these 7 days webinar series, you are actually expecting this type of views. I really don't have actually a question, but it's rather an observation. The thing is that when you are actually arguing with Professor Bhattacharya, in one point of time, you told that it's probably the academician who need to sit together to decide how to standardize these varieties. But from your talk itself, it seems to me that Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri, whatever may be the name, okay, this language, rather I would prefer to say that Muitui Bhasha or the Desi Bhasha, it actually caught in a tension between, say, for example, the regionalism and at the same time the caste. Okay, so this type of thing. So it actually caught in between this type of thing. So now the thing is that whether we will actually consider Gwalparia as a variety of Rajbanshi or a separate language, that hardly matters. That didn't actually depends on the way we, the academician or the politician, look at it. Rather, it's the people whose perception actually matter, because this is the way the census people they're actually talking about. Okay, so now if it is the case, then I think don't you think that we should leave this question to the people only, let them to decide how do they actually want to see themselves? Okay, so because why I'm saying these things, because we already have these okay, so I'm actually getting feedback. Okay, so can you I think someone has to actually switch off.
Rimal, you have to
yeah.
switch off.
Yeah. So the thing is that, see, if we are trying to actually provide certain solution to these people, then definitely we will be end up with the problems. The way these government people and politicians, they have created the problems by creating Kamtapuri Bhasha Academy as well as Rajbanshi Bhasha Academy. Okay, so I don't see it as a very simple kind of thing, mainly because of the reason that I see it, probably they have certain type of political intention, might be an ill intention to break the unity of these people. They want to they want to create boundaries within a particular speech community. So instead of imposing our decisions, instead of sending the decisions from the higher levels, I think it should come from the people itself. How do they want to see themselves? Okay, so that would be the most that would be the best thing, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Samir, that regarding this standardization and as well as my view, let's say, I never said that this is what they have to do. See, we know the whole tradition, field linguistic traditions, Grierson's linguistic tradition as well. So Grierson himself, let's say, if you talk about Rajbanshi, because he found the name Rajbanshi back there, and that's what he quoted Rajbanshi. Now, let's say, the simple thing talking about, like, I'm not giving a solution. This is the approach I am taking. And the names, let's say, there are many names. From those names, now we have come to two names, let's say, Rajbanshi and Kamtapuri, and since two academies are established now, so from these two academics, Bhasha Academy, let's say, from there, let's say, we know that what the politics is going on, and how this politics will unfold, we do not know. And it is totally leaving it to the people, whether they want Rajbanshi, whether they want Kamtapuri, whatever, they should decide. It is not the political leadership. So political leadership, definitely.
Yes.
You mentioned that there is a divide and rule policies and all. It's definitely back there. And Rajbanshi, yes, the kind of other thing, if you look at it, the back, way back in 2000 or 1990s, 1990s, how left government, because they avoided the term Kamtapuri, because they could see there could be a next step, they can go for state formation. So that was the reason, as simple as that, we all know. So as a result, the Kamtapuri itself, that time, anybody just saying Kamtapuri, the person will be jailed. And there are many people who were put in prison those days, back in 2000 and all. Now, from those names, as I am talking about the saga of nomenclatures, and for that matter, whether Rajbanshi or Kamtapuri established now, let's say, down the line, 10 years, 15 years, or 50 years. And if it is standardized variety, so maybe from there, Gwalpariya could be one of the varieties of Rajbanshi, or maybe the Rangpuriya could be the one of the varieties, because depending on regional and social variation, we can have the variation. And as a linguist, we cannot stop the variations in general.
True.
So, same thing, let's say Gwalpariya. If Gwalpariya gets the standardization, and if Gwalpariya lets itself established, if there is a Gwalpariya Bhasha Academy and all, well, we accept it, no problem.
True.
So I'm not telling that. This is my way of approach, and I'm not telling any political leader to some extent, okay, go and do this. This is the thing I feel right. This is my approach. I have been doing it since I have started writing, let's say, in my essays and different places. I just simply use the name Rajbanshi/Kamtapuri. And it is people's decision, whether they follow it or not follow it. So it's totally up to them. This is, so as a country, let's say, democratic country, I have my democratic rights also, let's say. So I have been following this and I will follow it, let's say.
True. Yeah. So I actually agree with you. But you know what seems to me that when government actually identify same language in two names, okay, so it's actually an effort to create ambiguity, which will actually delay the process of, say, for example, introducing the language in the education. Okay, because when you are trying to introduce it at the level of education, then what will happen? Then people will say whether we will introduce it in the name of Kamtapuri or in the name of the Rajbanshi. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you. And I also just want to add this thing that probably, yeah. So yeah, I really do not know how to solve this riddle actually. Yeah, yeah. So this is actually an observation. Oh.
We once again have Dr. Indranil Datto. Your comments and questions, anything, Dr. Datto, please.
Yes, sorry, my colleague and friend Shomir always makes me think more than I should. And so from Shomir's comment, kind of taking a leaf out of it. And I was sort of thinking strategically, if we think, operationally in terms of thinking about languages lying in a continuum and not sort of be reductive ourselves and thinking about, sort of nomenclature, right? So in that sense, I think it may offer a way to disrupt this sort of preference for one language over the other. If you think about it, I think intellectually, we all, I'm sure, will agree that over vast sort of stretch of geography, there is definitely going to be a great deal of difference. And so all of these sort of languages in that sense lie in a continuum. So how, I mean, I feel that, we shouldn't sort of fall ourselves into the trap of being sort of reductive into thinking about, this is this language and that is the other language and so on. So in some ways, maybe I would like to invite you to sort of think about it that way, right? That if you don't sort of think about these languages as different, then it's also important to think about that that there are differences, but the differences lie over a continuum, right? And that they're not sort of categorical in that sense. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So that's what Sir D.P. Patnaik, if we talk about D.P. Patnaik, that's the same continuum he talks about, that you start your journey from Jammu Kashmir and walking down the villages, down the line and all, you do not feel any differences in the languages. So there is a continuum. So all the Indo-Aryan belt, let's say you start walking from Delhi, from Haryana belt, and let's say you go to all this Magadhan branch, Angika, Bajjika, and all that, Maghi, Angi, and then let's say Bhojpur belt, Maghi, and then let's say our Shujjapuria, and so you hardly feel any difference. That's what D.P. Patnaik talks about the continuum. We talk about the continuum. But at the same time, if you look at the other factors to some extent, these are the linguistic things, but the language somewhere, we cannot also one hand, let's say, isolate it in one hand from the society. It is there. But at the same time, in a way, we also took it as if like it is ours. The kind of identity we talk about, let's say. When language is associated with identity, so the continuum, in my understanding, somehow it shakes to some extent. So the whole Kamtapuri thing, if you start thinking about Kamtapuri, so the continuum shakes, let's say, and especially the administrators or the political leaders, they are thinking also, let's say, they get a very good big jerk. Why? The Kamtapuri, the name of Kamtapuri. See, try to understand this history. That's what I talked about history. Kamtapuri, so to the Kamtapur land, let's say, it is part of the larger history. So part of Bangladesh, Rangpur part, even part of this, so to say, some parts of Nepal and Bhutan. Jalpaiguri district, which was again part of Bangladesh and earlier Bangladesh, if you look at it. So the whole Kamtapuri, if you talk about, so the Kamtapuri somehow embraces all these geographical lands. So the political leadership, you never know down the line what will happen. So one hand, language we're looking at from linguistic point of view that yes, it exists in the continuum, but when it comes to referring to people's identity and other related factors. So then let's say we need to look at from a different kind of perspective, Definitely, I totally agree with you, sir. You have to look at from a continuum, in a continuum to some extent.
We have come almost to the end of this very, very engrossing and engaging session. We would have loved to hear more from Dr. Roy and all the very nice comments and additions made by the other distinguished linguists, but the time shows, the clock shows that it's time to call it a day. So once again, we thank you. And now may I request Professor Krishna Bhattacharya ma'am, convener of this 7-day program, to conclude this program officially. Madam, please.
Thank you, Professor Chandramalli. So time is up. So I won't say more words. Just I want to thank all of you, our respected speaker, Professor Horimadhav Rai, for his wonderful lecture and explanations and participating in the discussions with all the participants. And I thank today's coordinator, Professor Chandramalli Sengupta, for nicely coordinating and giving a nice introductory lecture. I thank all the participants present here. I thank Shomir, coordinator, one of the coordinators, and above all, I thank Professor Amitabh Chakraborty for being present all the time. Without his presence and without his participation, the discussion cannot be continued fruitfully. So thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you, Amitabh sir. Thank you, Krishna Bhattacharya ma'am, and Samir Karmakar, as well as Chandramalli and Chandramalli Sengupta and Professor Indranil Dakto. Thank you, all of you. Unknowingly, if I have hurt someone's sentiments or feelings of something, please forgive me. And since, as you can understand, that mother language, it's, let's say, when you talk in your mother language or on your mother language, you feel little passionate about it, you see. So because of that, maybe I was a little bit overcharged or something, so don't take it otherwise, or maybe my tone to some extent, if I hurt your sentiments or something, or disrespect you when saying my things, boldly. So I really, let's say, again, apologize for that things and all. So thank you so much for your cooperations and asking me those questions and all. So thank you so much, Professor Amitabh Bhattacharya and others, those who listened to me. Thank you.
And with that, we conclude this 6th or the penultimate day of the 7-day long lecture series. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.